Welcome back, sports buds. It's been a while, but us being back the way we are, that means football season's upon us. Thank God. I'm Chris Billings. I'm joined with Nicholas Chia Chia Kerr, joined with Tony Parlay Reyes. We're back for another football season. This is our official football preview show. We're going to jump into all the preseason news and predictions. So we'll probably have a couple episodes here going for you, and then we'll have our week one prediction episode right before that week starts. So bear with us. We're going to be rolling into this football season just like everyone else. So welcome, gentlemen. How was your summer? Start with you, Nick.
Summer was good, can't complain. Did some traveling, doing some home renovations, but much like preseason, I'm ready to get out all these kinks, get into the season.
Tony, how about your summer? Probably spent less time at Home Depot than Nick.
It's too short, man. It's too short. It's 60 degrees here today.
Oh.
What is that? It's football weather, I guess. It's football weather.
It's definitely not football weather where I'm at. I'm sure it's a solid 98 degrees outside right
Mm-hmm.
now. We're in the dog days of summer, my friends. Um, yeah, I watched some baseball this summer. Got to see a basketball championship this summer. So it was a good off season. Yeah, Nick shakes his head. I had a great summer, but hey, I'm ready, boys. I'm back. I'm ready for the Broncos to suck. I'm ready to be miserable again. Let's do this. But first, a lot of just football related shows that came out over the summer. And we just wanted to give our feedback on them. We'll start out with Netflix's quarterback show, which featured Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota, or Mariota, however you want to say it. But it actually, I personally found it to be a pretty fascinating show. It's like it reminded me of early Hard Knocks days.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I'll start with you, Nick. What just general thoughts on the
Yeah,
football show?
that's exactly what I was thinking. It brings you back to that early Hard Knocks days where it gives you more insight into these players that you don't see. I know we have all this social media and there's a lot more access to players now than there used to be, but I think with this, it shows what these players go through throughout the entire season. And we are lucky, well, I wouldn't say lucky enough. Chris definitely wouldn't think that, but we got to see a quarterback go all the way through preseason, all the way through winning a Super Bowl. So I thought it was an interesting take.
Honestly, it was insightful to see. Like I can sit there and be like, rah, I hate Patrick Mahomes as much as I want
Hmm.
to, but it was actually very insightful and to see him just deal with his wife, building a new home. Like
Hmm.
he's staking his claim of Kansas City. Bringing a new child into the world. All these things that he was going through during that process. It was great to see. And as much as the quarterbacks got to sign off on the final product here, like I feel like you did see an authentic side to all three of them.
Yeah,
I feel like I
completely
saw a
agree.
side that I never saw. Like honestly, like it made me appreciate Patrick Mahomes' wife more.
Yeah,
Brittany, I believe her name
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Like, yeah, just she's a normal person. Like they've basically been together since high school. So yeah, like just a lot of like misconceptions that I personally had just out of hate and spite. But it was good to see. Tony?
Yeah, I would agree with you guys. It was very well produced, and I think it had a couple things going for it. The first one, the timing of when it was released, that perfect dog days of summer,
Hmm.
July. It hit right when that
Yep.
football thirst was like first hitting.
Yeah, right
And
after mini
second,
camps.
yeah, right after mini camps, you're right. And the second, I think because it was the first one, it didn't have like the same feel as like some of these other sports documentaries and like later seasons of Hard Knocks. Like you were saying, it felt like early Hard Knocks. Because it was the first one, I felt like we got more insight and access because they're like, we don't know how this is going to be received.
Hmm.
So we have to be more legit and more authentic with the final product. And I don't think any of the other seasons after that, after this one, will be like as good as this one was. Because I think that this one was so authentic, like you said. We saw all the no one when I watched that show, I had no anticipation that I was going to learn
Yeah.
that Brittany Mahomes played professional soccer in Iceland. I had no idea that we were even going to talk about her or she was even going to be like a main storyline.
That
But
she
you learned
owns a
about
soccer team in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But like you said, you learned about these people's families, and that's what was like
Yeah.
pretty well done. Is like you learned about their lives and who they were off the field. That's probably like one of the best things that show did accomplish was illustrate who these dudes were off the field.
I do kind of feel like it's going to end up like that Jets Hard Knocks, though, of where you got so much authenticity in that season of Hard Knocks that they immediately course corrected after that of like, oh, can't do as much of the swearing and stuff like that, can't be as candid as that. Or like, I feel like Rex Ryan, like he kind of felt like he looked like a fool from it as well. And so coaches were a little more reserved going forward as well. So I definitely think like there'll be some course correction. So all of this, what was your most surprising thing that you got out of it, Nick?
Most surprising thing? I mean, just the personal day-to-day lives, just how much access you got to that. That was the most surprising thing to me.
Tony?
Come on, here's your alley-oop. The likability of Kirk Cousins. That is the number one takeaway from that show.
Yes.
As much as I would love to agree with Tony, and we'll probably have a sidetrack about this, I honestly thought it was Marcus Mariota, like essentially quitting on his team. Like that was the perception I got from it. Like I realize he has to protect himself, but man, that was just a weird. I won't even say it's a bad look. It was a
I mean,
weird look.
didn't he get like sort of injured, plus he was having the baby at the same time with like 3 weeks left? Wasn't he
Yeah.
like,
But
didn't he
it
go on
seemed
the
like
injured?
he just checked out though and wanted to
I
go
mean,
back to the
I
island.
think maybe this quarterback show maybe makes it seem like that a little bit more than it actually was.
Well, I think the damning thing was the Arthur Smith interview where he's just like, we never had that conversation about him having surgery. Like that was woo. Like that ranks like in
That's what it was.
terms
He
of
wasn't injured. He had surgery.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that he basically opted to have this season-ending surgery, and he said he discussed it with the team, and they were okay with it. And then, like, yeah, Arthur Smith just kind of awkwardly was like, "We didn't have that conversation." So that was probably the biggest thing for me. Like, that was just a weird way to see him end that season. And you kind of root for him throughout that show, and to see it end the way it ended, I was like, yikes. All right. Well, jumping around a little bit. Um, Nick, have you seen Swamp Kings yet?
I have, and it was very underwhelming. Yeah, I think, I mean, because me personally, I've been waiting for some kind of 30 for 30 or something to come out on these Florida Gators team, but with all the controversy they had in school, after school, with the players that they had, I just thought it was very underwhelming. They hit all the good stuff.
Tony?
Nope, I have not watched it. I have passed on it. I have not heard good things. I saw a TikTok where Cam Newton was even talking shit about it. So I was just like, okay, this
I don't
obviously
even think there was a
They
mention of Cam
no,
Newton at
yeah,
all.
no mention of Cam Newton.
No mention
Pers-
of Riley Cooper.
Percy Harvin, like if you went to go get like a snack out of the fridge, like you mentioned or you missed the mention about him.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very weird documentary. Like, don't get me wrong, like it hit me in the nostalgia area of like, god damn, college football was fun in the 2000s. But
Yep.
like Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer, definitely some reputation laundering going on with that whole series. I'd say, I guess my personal biggest takeaway surprise from it was just how crazy Urban Meyer was with his workouts, which
Mhm.
it's not really a surprise in the athletics world, but like I was like, damn, like he was no joke. So I guess that was my biggest takeaway from it. Yeah, just very much glance the surface, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of these untold documentaries on Netflix a little more. But your biggest surprise or takeaway from it, Nick?
I just still with the same fact that I said that there was just so much they didn't mention. Like I went into it expecting so much more.
Yeah. Um, kind of funny to hear Urban Meyer talk about his zero tolerance policy for hitting women.
Yeah. I mean,
That
it should have been known at the very beginning when they were doing like the intro for it, and Urban Meyer said this is gonna be fun. We should
yeah,
have known that there wasn't gonna be shit.
that was definitely when like my spider sense started tingling. I was like, oh shit. Like here we go. Yeah, that one was definitely not as good. So we'll stick with the Untold documentaries. They've just had a new batch that's come out. I've watched all of them except I think the Balco one on the steroids. So I'll jump back to you, Tony. What are some of the ones that you've watched and thoughts on like this? I think it's season 3 of Untold.
They're like getting used, man. They're getting used. It's frustrating because I feel like they're getting these topics that are so interesting, and it feels like there's enough time that's gone by to which you will be like unravel and get to the truth of all these things. Like I watched the Balco one, and I was so disappointed at the end of that one, and I was like, you know, this really left me unfulfilled. I wanted more questions. I watched the Johnny Manziel one, and then after it took me like the next day after the Johnny Manziel one, I was like, they really didn't ask any follow-up questions at all. Like,
Mhm.
what is going on here? This doesn't seem right. Like, this is weird. This was just like framed weird. And then we had our little like dispute over the Jake Paul one. We'll see what happens with the future of Jake Paul as a profitable boxer or whatever is going to happen with him. But I don't know. I don't know. It just feels like it's leaving me wanting a little bit more. When I watch all of these.
Nick, have you watched any of these documentaries?
I watched part of the Johnny Manziel one and only the Gators one. I had Tony's the one that put me onto this when he told me about the Gators one, so I haven't had a chance yet.
Yeah, Johnny and Manziel one's probably where you get like the most, I guess, insight of just like family wasn't rich, dad faked a
Hmm.
heart attack. You get a couple of those nuggets. So that was intriguing to see, but really it was just like it was matter of factly of like, here's what happened, here's what happened, the end.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and to the same extent with the Jake Paul one, just like, hey, here's what this dude is. And I think that one gets away with it a little more because most people don't know who Jake Paul is outside of,
Yeah.
folks that are extremely online. So
Hmm.
I think a lot of people walked away from that like, holy shit, had no idea about this guy. So that one was probably the one of the better ones I've seen so far. I would say I'd rank that 1A, Johnny Football 1B, but that's not saying too much. So yeah, like it seems like this is the trend that sports documentaries have taken post Last Dance. And so that's probably why
Yeah.
the quarterback show was so refreshing to all of us is it you got a little
Yeah.
more of that authenticity and it wasn't this manufactured thing.
Yeah, and like Tony said, they released it at the perfect time, right when we were in
Hmm.
need for it.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll jump back to quarterback. I fell in love with Kirk Cousins.
I
I
think
think
everyone did.
I like that.
I fell for him,
First off,
definitely.
I feel bad if the dude's wife basically dresses him. That's, like that was one of the first things I texted Tony, I think, an episode in was I was like, wow, all 3 of these wives control these dudes. Like these guys would not function without their wife.
These guys control entire teams, but they're led by their wives,
Yeah,
which is how it is in real life too.
this is true.
I know I wouldn't be able to do anything.
and up.
Oh
I'll
my
say the same.
goodness.
But now, like Kirk Cousins, like I'm rooting for that guy this season. I legitimately hope he's in an MVP conversation and that the Vikings can do something this season. But it seems like folks are a little bit down, and you'll see that further in one of our preview episodes when we get into some of the division stuff. But Tony, any pushback on Kirk Cousins? I know you're one of the biggest Kirk Cousins haters out there.
I think that that's why he was so well received is because there is a narrative that does have some truth to it, and it's like mean spirited from the media towards him. And it like what after you watch this thing on Kirk Cousins, like I start to think about like if you're a media reporter and you meet Kirk Cousins and you talk to him, it's like how are you critical of him? It's so difficult
Yeah.
because he's so likable as a person. And
Mhm.
that's what I think was like that's what created that dynamic because you never get favorable coverage in the media of Kirk Cousins. Never. You never hear it. It's never like it's very rare do you hear it. And then you see how good of a person he is and how good of a teammate he is, and you're just like, this is so weird. Like it's like that's why it's so authentic and refreshing because you're like, I know he's not putting on a show. This is who Kirk Cousins is.
Yeah.
Like this guy is not cursing. He is this like a default quarterback that's been made in Madden that is a Christian cyborg.
Yeah.
Like that is what Kirk Cousins is. Like there is no faking it. There is no phoniness. And I think that's especially why you fell in love with it, Chris, because you just watched a whole season of a phony quarterback infiltrate your city and your fan base. And you were like, you know what? This Kirk Cousins guy has some shortcomings, but he's legit. He never is phony. He never is fronting. He's always authentic. He's accountable. He never causes any problems after that playoff loss to the Giants. So straight up there, answers all the questions, and he's like, "Yep, it bothers me. I need to be better." Blah, and you're like, "What more do you want of this guy?" Yes,
Yeah.
I would like him to be better, but so that's what created that dynamic for me. Like I still have my criticisms of him and my thoughts on him as a quarterback, but it kind of created that like dynamic where you separate the person from the player. And so you're just like, wow, man, okay, like Kirk Cousins is actually like he's a really good guy. Like that whole Tuesdays off thing, I was just like, wow, holy
Yeah.
crap, like man, like he really is like I have to be with my wife. Like there's no way I can be a good quarterback if my home life isn't set up. And it's revealing. You don't see that typically. You see like a sanitized PR campaign, like in the Untold campaign, in the Untold documentaries. And I think that's why, personally, that's why I was like, damn it, this is like a PR campaign for Kirk Cousins, but it is legit. It is authentic. Like this is actually who he is. And I can see why he's like, he has been successful. Like I can see why he's gotten to where he is.
To push back on you a little, I think maybe it seems so much like a PR campaign for Kirk Cousins is because we live in an age now where every athlete is doing a PR campaign. They're all
Yeah.
about their brand constantly.
Mhm.
Um, and
Except for
so
Kirk Cousins. So yeah, like
he's
you're
like,
right. Like,
my wife dresses me, man. He's like, Cole's,
yep,
Cole's special here. Like, what do you want from me?
yep.
Um, so I think that's why maybe that like stuck out to you so much is because there's so many athletes nowadays that's just all they're worried about is their
Yeah.
personal brand. And so I was actually going to tie it back to Tebow of just like this is who Tebow should have been in the NFL, and just everything that surrounded Tebow didn't allow that to happen. Like just even the Swamp King's documentary, like you feel like he rehearsed everything he
Oh
said for
yeah.
that documentary.
Yeah.
Like the opening shot of him, I think was like it was like up against like a lake and him holding a damn Bible, and I was just like, "We get it, dude. We get it." Um, so yeah, I think that's another reason Kirk Cousins just he stands out, man. Nick, you have any final thoughts on Kirk Cousins,
I
a place
mean,
we never thought we would be?
I mean, honestly, just watching that, it just makes the airplane video that much funnier. like what you guys were just talking about with his personality, it just makes it that much funnier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, so the other like it's weird, but we talked about it a little bit. The last kind of NFL programming, football programming we're talking about here is Hard Knocks. And that used to be like the topic of conversation. Like that was
Mhm.
water cooler fodder leading into a football season. And now it's just it's completely lost its luster. Um I've watched a couple episodes and then I'm like I don't care.
I mean, it's the Jets, so
Yeah.
I can really care less. Plus, it's Aaron Rodgers who's just coming back to prove something or try to prove something, but we'll see. I still think they're third in the division.
It
A
potentially
lot of
could be.
propaganda. A lot of propaganda going on.
And yeah, it seems like it's just lip service for the Jets, and like they're already getting enough lip service from the media as it is
Mhm.
right now that it just all right, too much for me. Like I was out after 2 episodes. I couldn't do it. Like albeit like that first episode, kind of interesting. Saw a little bit of a different side to Aaron Rodgers, saw more of like his teammate side, but also like you kind of feel like there's some production to that as well. So like I don't know. I'll start with you, Tony. Like any suggestions for like what Hard Knocks could do to bounce back, or is there anything they can do?
Not anymore. It's over.
Yeah.
Because they have that other one too that competes with it, right? That's like all or nothing that like Amazon does. And then they even have like a Hard Knocks that they do in season now. So like they're just beating a dead horse, man. They're
Mhm.
giving us too much. Like that's why the quarterback show was so refreshing. Is like they gave us something different. Like we've seen this storyline, we've seen this like Hard Knocks thing so many times. Like how
Yeah.
many times have we seen this? I don't know. I don't think there's much to it.
I agree because teams don't want to do it, players don't want to do it. So you're gonna get a shit product.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like they've kind of taken the drama out of it, of seeing like those guys like kind of climb up through
Mhm.
training camp and either get kicked to the curb or you survive. And they don't seem to really do that as much anymore. So yeah, adios Hard Knocks. It's been nice knowing. All right. Before we break on this episode, we'll talk about one thing that's kind of gone on this off season, jumping from media to actual things happening in the NFL, and that's running backs. It's been kind of a shit show for running backs this off season. And I mean, there's been meetings between running backs, there's been talks of like a running backs union, all kinds of just wild things have been thrown out there. Um, I'll start with you, Nick, of just kind of what your thoughts have been on just the weird state of running backs right now. Like Dalvin Cook, he was out there for a while before
Yeah.
getting picked up by the Jets. You have Jonathan Taylor out there that's wanting to be
Mhm.
traded right now, feels disrespected by the Colts. So Josh
Josh
Jacobs
Jacobs,
and the
yeah.
Raiders that he basically wants a new deal or wants out. So thoughts, Nick?
I mean, the running back position over the last, what, 5, 10 years isn't what it used to be because teams aren't going with that one running back that's going to take all like 80% of the carries each year. They're all going with multi-back systems. So when you're going to multi-back systems, you can't be paying one back $15 million a year, even though Dolphins have gone after every single one of those running backs that you just named, including Jonathan Taylor right now. So I mean, I don't think that the running back market is what it used to be because there's so many guys out there, and they even have wide receivers running the ball. I mean, look what Kansas City's doing. They put everybody in the backfield. So I think that's why that running back isn't as sought after as it used to be.
Tony,
It's interesting. I I really
your
wish I
team's
could
kind of
figure
been a
this out.
casualty of all this.
I I know. It's really interesting to watch because I've tried to figure this out, and seems to be the problem. that a good running game doesn't always mean a good running back. And you still need a good running game to win in the NFL. But that doesn't mean that you have to have a good running back to produce that good running game. Like you can have average running backs produce that good running game. And like you said, Nick, like you guys could have had Dalvin Cook. You just didn't want to pay for him.
Exactly.
Like there's a and so like there I don't know what the answer is if they're just oversaturated when they come out of college and there's just so many and the rookie deal gets they don't get any value despite the production that they produce. I don't know. It's weird. Like, are you going to limit the touches? It's very strange. I know that like the Christian McCaffreys are one every so often, but it's so weird. I know how risk averse these owners are, like Nick was saying, and that's why they're going with multiple backs because of the risk of injury and playing this position when they get so many touches. But I don't know, man. Sometimes these dudes are freaks. Derrick Henry, I thought he would have been gone by now, and he's still one of the best running backs in the league. So I don't know the answer to it. It's complicated, man.
But even the Titans are in a weird spot where like they need to actively figure out how to get away from Derrick Henry to have a future with their team. But for me, I'd say it ties back to just what we talked about Swamp Kings. The spread offense is what's really changed the game of you need those pass catching backs. And that you're able to find more and more nowadays. Like, yeah, if you want to find a bell cow back that just runs 2,000 yards for you, very difficult to find, yes. But these pass catching backs, not as difficult to find.
Yeah, because you get some of these smaller receivers, just turn them into a running back. You have them play out of the backfield.
And to Tony's point, like, I don't think you need a great back anymore. I think you need an offensive line that's really great with run blocking. And you can, I mean, I've to bring it home with the Broncos, like I've seen them be successful with Philip Lindsay, which should not be a player in this league, but he was because of a great run blocking scheme
Yeah.
that he was able to adapt to. So I think they're at a place where they're a dime a dozen now. I think the emphasis now for teams is having a really great tight end, somebody that can just tear apart the middle of the field.
But can also block in the run game.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like any other profession though. I think they realize this. Like me and Tony, both journalism grads. Modern journalism grads, it's not you're just writing stories for a newspaper. You need to be able to edit those stories. You need to be able to take photos, take video. You need to be good at like social media. You need to be good at like broadcast media. All these different things, and the same things being asked of running backs nowadays of like, no, we're spreading the ball around a little bit more and you need to adapt to that system. Like we're not just going to hand it off to you 30 times for 1,500 yards and then we end up having a 9-8 season.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable in today's NFL.
Yeah. I don't know what you do though if you have a player like Saquon Barkley though. Would you just be like, I'm sorry, we're just going to gamble that we'll get 80% of the production of you for half the cost because we're just not going to pay you, despite how good you are?
But that's I truly believe that. I don't know about you two, but I truly believe the Giants could just find some guy off the street that can give them, 80% of the production of Saquon, and they just modify their
For
offense a little bit.
30% of the price.
Yeah.
The margins are so close. That probably cost the Giants 2 wins. Like Saquon was pretty damn good for them last year, man. So that's why it's like
But that's the thing with running backs. You can't go off of past performance. You never can. Not like other positions in this league.
That's true. They do have that high risk of injury.
Yeah, well, like quarterbacks, like it's more of a gradual drop off. Very rarely do you have the quarterback that just what the hell happened? Unless you're Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But yeah, and same with wide receivers. As much as they're out there running, like very rarely do you have these receivers that just drop off a cliff. Like you
Yeah,
start to
I mean
see
it's the
hints.
wear and tear. It's the wear and tear because like you guys said, 30 a running back carrying the ball 30 times a game. Receiver is not catching the ball 30 times, so he's not getting hit 30 times. Where even running backs on play actions are still getting hit like they ran the ball.
Yeah.
It's just that wear and tear. And coming back to it, I see why these running backs got together as a committee because they are the upper echelon of the running backs and they see this happening to the position. They're basically just getting used until they fall apart. And then they're just going to find the next one.
But what's the alternative to have like a winning team? Like none of these guys at this point in time in the NFL, if you're adding them to a team, is that team suddenly a Super Bowl contender? Like outside of the Chiefs, which are already a Super Bowl contender.
Mhm.
Um, like I guess maybe the Dolphins, if you're
I don't know
adding
if we
like Jonathan
if
Taylor
we
or
add
Josh
Jonathan
Jacobs,
Taylor, yeah,
like
to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
that certainly raises expectations
Mhm.
for you all, but I don't know if
Yeah.
that necessarily makes you guys a Super Bowl favorite overnight. I'd say that
No,
I
you're
mean,
makes
we
you
right.
still have the
suddenly a
Chiefs.
yeah,
You're
I'd say
right.
that
The
suddenly
Chiefs,
makes
the
you a
Bengals are still out
conference
there,
favorite.
but a team with a Miami Dolphins team with Jalen Taylor, I'll take them over the Bills. But they'd still have to compete with the Bengals and the Chiefs.
Well,
I think Chris is right though. Even if the Bills added Jonathan Taylor, I don't think it would add anything because the only reason the running back adds that supreme value is that their ability to succeed in the passing game, like Christian McCaffrey, like you kept saying, is the
Yeah.
move to the spread offense. And I mean, Jonathan Taylor's good. He's not Christian McCaffrey in the passing game. He's not Dalvin Cook in the passing game. And that's what creates that value for these players. And so it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, Jonathan Taylor is great. You put him on any team in the league, he's not really going to change that team. Saquon Barkley, he kind of adds more value in the passing game. That's kind of what I was saying. Like Josh Jacobs, not as much. So I kind of see that argument, but that's what's
that's the
hard.
thing. Modern NFL, like you put Jonathan Taylor on the Bills, he's taking away touches for Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
because
Yeah.
Josh Allen is their running option.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it's a different league now. Um, and like they're kind of going through that here in Broncos country of just like, yeah, like we're gonna have this run first offense seemingly this season, but why do we have this run first offense when we're paying this quarterback $100 million when we could just have some random guy in there handing the ball off, 30 times a game? So it does go both ways as well of
It's because
just
your
like,
practice field eats all the wide receivers.
yes, sad days. All right, that takes us. We're done with this segment here of just kind of talking some NFL offseason stuff. Join us in part 2 coming up in a couple days that we'll have it dropped and we'll start getting into the NFL preseason. This has been your host, Chris Billings, Nick Kerr, Tony Parlay. We'll see you for part 2.